Are you recording? Because that might be the intro to this podcast. If that's
Yeah, I've been recording like the last 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's
right.
You are listening to 15 Minutes with HB, a podcast produced by bisnation.net members.
Alright, so let's kick this off. We're on, what episode is this, Bees? Is this 32, 33?
We got 32 here.
32.
Alright,
yep.
We got episode 32. It's me. If you guys don't know my voice, it's UB. We got the other guy who's the host of this thing. What's your name?
Kent.
We have Kent. His Superman identity, once he takes off his glasses and gets rid of the curly Q, is HB. But we do have a special guest with us. Why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm the Bird of Prey. You can just call me Bird. I do some streaming. I mostly play 19s. And yeah, I've been playing WoW since vanilla. And around the XP off patch is when I stopped playing Twinks, and I just recently got started back interested in again, and having lots of fun.
The Twinks lure you back in.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? It's like, and just when I thought I was out, they
Yep.
pulled me back in. What have you been doing with yourself in between your time prior to the patch and now? Have you been playing any other games, or just decided to take a full break?
Yeah, so in Wrath of the Lich King I raided for a little bit, and then in Cataclysm I did PvP, and then I just kind of stopped playing, and I picked up League of Legends, which, yes, I know, I'm a heathen or whatever. And there was a period of about 2 years, I'd say, where I got really deeply involved in that game. I got involved with a bunch of other theory crafting guys, and I ended up writing for a curse website called Arena Gaming. So you might be able to find some of my articles over there. And if you don't like nerdy math, I suggest avoiding those. But other than that, not much been going on.
Well, I feel like Rise is going to love that. He'll probably check it out, even though he doesn't play LoL, just because it has to do with some good old-fashioned numbars. But the reason we're together tonight, if I am not mistaken, is to talk about the 19s?
We're talking about 19s. The 19 Stees. I guess kicking it off, last week we talked about 19s too, and believe it or not, since last week a lot's happened in a week, especially on the forums.
Yeah.
There's probably a few places we could start. I think that maybe the best place to start is the community.
The Rogue?
The community unity. The
You feel way too good about that one.
Dr. Seuss had a whole nother level,
Yep.
son.
Yep.
So there's just like this common desire to monitor, that's a good word, how many rogues are in games. Now, I think there's a few things to be talked about. Is this the right thing to do? What impacts will this have? What impacts are rogues having on the games right now? And could this be accomplished even if, is this a reasonable thing to shoot for? Is this something that can be done within the 19 community?
This intrigues me very much, because coming from like my background, it's from, say, 29 and 39 for the most part. I've played 19s a bit. But 29s and 39s have both faced this problem, and it seems like this is the first time 19s have looked at it and been like, wait a second, there may be something we actually have to do in order to not only make the bracket more fun, but to keep the bracket alive. So in terms of this rogue ban, where do you guys think that stands? Is this a positive move?
I
want to... Here, you go. You seem like you actually have
I definitely think it could be positive. Little caveat here. Since I've seen this thread, there have been 0 rogues AFK'd in any of my games. So, hasn't really become a full-fledged thing yet. But, yeah, there are rogues who have less damage than healers, and I mean, it's very, very small amounts of damage, like in the single thousands, 4,000
Yeah.
damage in a BG or something. Whereas, even not the highest, hunters or boomkins or something are getting in the 20, 30,000 range. So it seems like they're not really having much of an impact. And there's also a lot of them, so that low impact kind of just makes for a really passive, uninteresting game that normally ends in one side kind of not playing, I guess.
That's really interesting, actually, to bring it up like that, where I've experienced the same thing too. I've seen a lot of both, where you'll have, like, especially on the Lion side, which seems to be, and from what I've seen, the side that tends to have more rogues. And I feel like kind of what you're saying is, like, a lot of these rogues that are playing right now are either one of the two or both, inexperienced or undergeared. And a lot of them are both, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And when you have that combo of people trying in on these classes, well, everyone wants to play an OP class that they can succeed with on their own. And right now, rogues can be one of those classes. But rogues can be one of those classes, but you have to apply yourself in the style to match what that class can offer. What I mean by that is having 3 rogues on your team that are just stealthing around in midfield, avoiding to be killed, rather than having a rogue on your team that is opening on an enemy healer to cause some panic. There's a big difference between that. And we're seeing a lot more of rogues that are avoiding to get into the action, if that makes sense.
So do you think the whole fact that 19s are kind of based around the mid-strat now, and you have some rogues that are, say, scared to open because they don't want to get blown up, is that the problem, or is it that the rogues themselves, if they would coordinate and get that burst aligned on a healer, could actually turn the tides?
I think it's mainly that it is the inexperience of the rogues. I think that's the first big problem. When I go into a game, like, you can identify, like, I pretty much know who's a good rogue and a bad rogue by the time the game starts. Like, I can say, like, oh, I've seen that person play before, like, they're a good rogue, or I have no idea who this person is. If he doesn't impress me this game, then he's really not doing a good job. Because it's really easy to tell right now if a rogue's doing a good job, because they just open on someone significant on your team and cause them either to die or to pop a lot of cooldowns. And if they're not doing that, then, maybe not doing their job.
Yeah, so I don't think the problem is really that rogues are, like, either too strong or too weak, because they definitely can be strong, and they definitely can be weak. But, I mean, there's definitely an ability to make them fit. I just think, rogues have always been one of the more popular twink classes to kind of make, especially at 19s, from way back in the day.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of how to word this. I don't know. One of you guys can pick up for a minute.
Well, let me ask you guys this question then. It seems like, if I understand the thread on TI that's basically talking about limiting the number of rogues, it's that a lot of the problem has to do with how they fit into the current meta of Warsong Gulch.
Yes.
And that having an abundance of rogues puts that team at a disadvantage, in a sense, almost regardless of skill, because of the strain and positioning disadvantage it puts upon healers and possibly other DPS trying to peel for those rogues. So by limiting the number of rogues that can go into a Warsong Gulch, that expands that team's capability to get another class in, whether it be healer, ranged, warrior, whatever it may be, but something that will help that team win and possibly stay out of the containment phase of a game, and if nothing else, at least make the game more competitive.
I have something to say right off the bat, and I've been playing a lot of 20s lately, and this has something to do with what I have to say about 19s. Is that,
or is it just you want to talk about 20s?
No. the playstyle of the 19 bracket, just like you were saying, is very heavy mid-team oriented for the last to the mid to the end of Cata to now. Rogues, there are a lot of classes, and rogues are one of them right now, that can, with the enchants that have come from 5.4, that they can fit into the mid style. I'm going to say that if for rogues to fit into the mid style, I'm going to agree with the thread and say you probably don't want to have more than 2 to fit into the mid style, because then you're sacrificing mid damage. But if you have more than that, I still think it comes down to how skilled your rogues are. And first off, having the reason why I said the 20 thing is that I think that if the rogues play very objectively, you have an extreme advantage. If the rogues play non-objectively, it just severely hurts your team. And it's like, so for instance, is like you could have 4. I'm not saying that this is fun. I'm just saying this is a situation, because this would not be fun playing against. But you could have 4 rogues on your team, right? And you have 2 resto druids. I don't know, and 4 other DPS, doesn't matter, or a healer or something. So you have 10 people, 4 rogues, like 3 healers, 3 DPS. And your rogues could all play defense. Every single rogue could play defense, and you could play very objective, and you could have your resto druids go across mid, run the flag across with like speed stuff, and I bet you a single person will not get out of your base unless the entire team of Horde goes up and as a group goes to get the flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can definitely kind of make their own kind of meta playstyle almost.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's where having multiple rows could fit. I agree it wouldn't be very fun to play against, but having 4 rogues on the other team isn't really fun to play against in general, so
yeah.
You're not really ever gonna reach a situation, I think, where it's fun for everybody. It's interesting because I originally started out playing Rogue, and then I saw these threads as I was starting to get back involved in twinking that, there's too many rogues, and I was maybe 2 or 3 in a game, so it didn't really seem like a huge problem to me, so I re-rolled Hunter, and suddenly there's 6 rogues on both teams in every game. I mean, it was pretty eye-opening, I guess. It was very, very different from what I experienced playing on my Rogue.
Yeah.
And I haven't played him since, but there's definitely an impact that they have on the games. Games were going a lot slower paced. It wasn't people farming the graveyards as much. It was much more mid-focused. When there was 2 or 3, and then there's 4, 5, 6, some of them don't have rings or enchants or, much of any gear, really. Definitely a huge difference in the games you're playing. Either
you're bringing up the graveyard thing leads me to a question, and I saw this posted by a few people where it was the way the containment strategy works is that you have people rolling rogues so they can escape the containment by stealthing around. It almost seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you have a whole bunch of rogues, your team's going to get contained. The team doesn't want to get contained, so they roll rogues so they can get out of the graveyard. So what do you guys think about that?
I'm actually going to blame this on the map layout. Because back when I played, the graveyard was up, so you could go, back into your own flag room as soon as you res, and you can't do that anymore.
No, you cannot.
So, that was probably the biggest thing coming back for me, was, if you're getting graveyard farmed, you actually can't really do anything about it, aside from either stop resing, or somehow, all 10 res at once, and then kind of steamroll past? I don't know. It's very strange trying to play like that.
Go ahead, Bunt.
What'd you have for me?
I was going to ask you a question, so it's good you came in.
Okay. I have to say, going off the last podcast, I feel like I'm still on track with my statement. that made last podcast. And it's still not a positive one, it's a negative one, and that was what? We made the podcast a week ago, so 3 weeks now. I think games and pre-mades are going to be are still on the track for really going down if the Alliance faction does not step up, if people do not step up in playing Alliance. And I think that overall, moving away from rogues is a good idea, because I could get into a really long thing about it. Do we want to get into a really long thing about it?
Get started down your road and we'll change track if necessary.
The 19 bracket right now is accustomed to playing midfield, and just like you guys were saying, Bird, just like you were saying a little bit ago, right now, Horde side is... Now, I haven't been playing as much quite the last week, so you can also chip in here, but it sounds like there's been a lot of rogues. But it sounds like Horde's still winning most of the games. Is that not correct?
I wouldn't actually... I mean, it is more of Horde side winning, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it's probably, I don't know, 65-35-ish.
Okay. So that's better
Alliance,
than I last
I've still had good games.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely felt like the better games had less rogues.
Yeah, I think in that a bracket that... You have to understand that a lot of 19s really did not want to play O&D for a very long time, and that a lot of people had to break out of their shell to start playing midfield, and have now gotten accustomed to, okay, well, we play midfield. Well, if you get into a situation where you do join a game with X amount of too many rogues or whatever, everyone's playstyle is accustomed to, well, let's go into mid and chop. You know, that's what everyone does. We go chop. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not going to win 6-on-10 unless your rogues are playing very objective.
This is a really interesting thing for me, because I've sensed this a lot, is people seem very kind of set in their ways, you know, this is how it's done, you do it this way, or you don't do it at all. And I'm very much not that way. I am all about challenging convention and things and just trying new things and seeing what works and what doesn't. You know, even when I was playing my rogue, I tried out Mongoose, Dancing Steel, Elemental Force, just to see, you know, kind of what I felt worked better. And that's a really minor thing. That's weapon enchants. I mean, I've thought about on my Hunter actually re-rolling an entire different Hunter and going a haste set, because I calculated that you could get up to like 45% passive haste before you even lifeblooded, and you would just play marksman and just like aim shot people in a 1 second GCD and a 1 second cast time. And it was just, meh, I'll try that out eventually, but I mean, seem like that's interesting to me. What if I just build a haste set? You know, how would that work? Does that just change the playstyle of Hunter entirely? And, you know, these are kind of some really cool things that I don't think people are exploring enough. Yeah. I think they're too set in, you know, you play mid, so the rogues go mid and they lose mid. Well, what if all the rogues went D? Mm-hmm. I mean, games might be cool with 4 rogues when one team is focusing on D and the other team is pushing mid. That could be really interesting, but everyone's just going mid and then the rogue team loses.
I think that, exactly, but like, going off of that, I guess what I want, going off of that, pretty much is like, everyone's used to now playing mid, like, that's what it is. Like, you rarely go O&D now. So, a lot of the teams are having, the experienced players that are still playing caster and healer classes are going into mid, and the people that are trying out rogues to be flavor of the month, they're inexperienced, they're really not having a big impact in the game, so it's basically playing 6-on-10. And I think that, you know, if the rogues were all really skilled players and like, you can play mid with 6 rogues, but they have to open in global healers. Like, they have to, or else you don't win midfield. Like, that's it. It doesn't matter really if you kill DPS, unless like all 4 rogues global DPS at the same time. It doesn't really matter because you have to kill the healers. You have to kill the source if you're playing rogues, because they're just going to get, the other DPS are going to get healed and kill the rogues, because they're at like, what, 1.4k health? But, you know, that's not really fun. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you. Is that a good thing?
That's not fun. And that's why I think that, like, if you get into that situation, this is what I was trying to get to. Is if you get into the situation where you're playing with rogues, people are playing it wrong. Even though it's not like people are not enjoying how you have to play it with rogues. Like, okay, like, oh, we get in the game with 4 rogues. If we're going to AFK them, I mean, that's something that's still being worked out and maybe will or will not be implemented. But if they stay in the game, you have to adjust as a team and realize we're going to have to do this differently. We can't 6v10. We're going to have to set up a different kind of playstyle, and people are not doing that. That's not happening. So it's just basically queuing up to get into a game to get farmed. And no one's taking the step to either finally put this rogue effect in and, getting a community backed up to promote the midfield, which is fine. You could continue, if you really promoted that rule and you had midfield fights with 2 rogues on each side, I think it would be fine. If that doesn't go through and teams are still coming up with having multiple more rogues than they are used to, the play style of the games is going to have to change to continue getting games, or I just think people are going to be so unencouraged to continue queuing that games are going to stop popping.
Well, let me pose this to you. It's something that I've always thought, and it's something that completely killed 39s at one point, where people just continued to play on prots, even though prot warriors were so broken. They didn't care about the bracket. All they cared about was being able to play their prot warrior. So basically what they did was put themselves over the actual health of the bracket. They're like, I'm just going to play this warrior, it doesn't matter what happens, I'll play it till the bracket dies. Do you think it comes to a point at 19s, and it may not be there yet, but do you think it may come to, and it sounds like you do actually, so I'm not even sure why I'm posing it as a question, but that some people that play rogues kind of need to decide whether they value their ability to play a rogue themselves or their ability to play in the 19 bracket.
I think that the senior players in the bracket are going to have to step up, because I think that the people who are coming in to play Flavor of the Month Rogue are going to do it. But the senior players in the bracket who have come back, who have made this great resurgence in 19s for the past month or so now.
Yeah, it actually has been very impressive that it's just got going.
But I think that the people that have been here the whole time are going to have to step up and either A, put the rogue ban appeal into effect, or B, figure out a way to deal with it, especially on Alliance side. Because I think eventually people are, just like I said before, I think people are going to end up just not having a good time and shying away from queuing in a few weeks if this continues to go unaddressed.
And it seems really particularly terrible for Alliance. If Alliance is at this point the less organized faction, they're at a disadvantage from gearing from a leather-based caster standpoint, and then they also have to deal with the proliferation of rogues, and from the sounds of it, many of which aren't exactly geared up to XP off levels and may or may not have the awareness. I'm going to kill you for making me say that all the time.
I have an interesting question to pose to you guys. Do you think this is going to be kind of a case of, we're almost telling them how to play their class? Of, if you want to play Rogue, you're going to have to do it this way or else you can't play it. Or is it more of a case of...
That's interesting.
Is it more of a case of, you can play it however you want in a pre-made, but in Pugs, this is how it has to work for games to keep happening, or... I don't know.
Well, I think it goes back to what I call is the I versus we sort of mentality. Where, as I said before, with 39s and Prot Warriors and so forth, it's, you can keep playing your rogue, but if you keep doing so, you may not have a Warsong Gulch to play it in. So it depends what you value more. Do you value playing that rogue and doing just what you want to do over the community as a whole and having games pop, and maybe you step out of your shell and, I don't know, try a shaman or mage or whatever the class may be, or do you just have to keep playing that rogue no matter what the overall consequence is to the bracket, and maybe in a month you have nothing to play that rogue in? But HB, you may have a completely different opinion on that.
For the original question, the Bird just brought up is like, do we have to? Let me see if I'm getting this right. Is like, do we have to? Do senior players in the bracket or people have to step up? Have to like tell rogues you have to play in a certain play style, right? Was that kind of what you're?
Or
going
even
for?
Not play it entirely.
Yeah, I think one of the two has to happen. I think, kind of like I said earlier, is like I think the rogue ban either has to happen, everyone gets behind it, or people have to adjust their playstyle. But the thing is that a lot of people who are going in to play Flavor of the Month might not care.
Well, and that's where you get into a very sticky situation.
And see, this is what I have to say too. Is it's like, I personally don't like rogues. Like I don't like rogues. Can it work? Yes, it can work. It can definitely work. You can definitely use rogues and watch out things. Is it fun to play against? No. It can work. So it's how you apply yourself, and I think that a decision needs to be made as a community, one way or the other, to get a full, we're behind this effort as a community to, go left or right. If you go, there's no middle path, because you can't, you know what I mean by that? Like, if some people are if you get into a game, and let's say you have 4 rogues on your team, right? So let's say that 6 players, let's say 6 players, the other 6 players have been around for a while. They're community-based players. And let's say you go the middle route. Let's say that 3 players want to AFK the rogues out, 3 players want to have them play objective. Well, the rogues aren't going to get AFK'd out, and the rogues may or may not play objective. And you still have 4 rogues. You see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah.
And also, even if you manage to AFK the rogues out, that doesn't necessarily have the effect you desire. It may piss them off.
Yeah, it's
to
kind
get
of
more friends to bring
a lesser
more
of two
rogues.
evils there.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, who's to say you don't get a worse rogue? Who's to say you don't even get somebody else and then you're just stuck with less people? Yeah,
or
there's
you
lots
push
of kind of
someone
problems
out
with that.
from the bracket that could be a great player, but it's the first time you've seen him on a rogue, so you're like, yeah, that's just not going to work out. So it's a very tricky and delicate line that needs to be tightrope walked through, and it's, what's up?
The other thing is too, like, here's the other thing that I think a lot of people aren't looking at, is that, yes, rogues are the blatantly overpowered, dumb class right now, but, I mean, I'm sorry if you can't see it, but, like, most of the classes right now are blatantly overpoweredly dumb with the enchants. I can 3-shot someone on my shaman if I get crits.
But
it's not like other classes can do this. But the one difference is between the two is that one class can stealth, the other one, most of the others can't.
So here's where I'm going to take that. Do you think this is a problem limited to rogues and their playstyle and just how the class works, or do you think in the future, if there's, I don't know, I've heard of warriors shield slamming and one-shotting people. If there was another kind of toxic class to the bracket that was ruining games for people, do you think you would have to kind of go another ban route, or what would you do then?
I would say there are several different ways to go about it. Like, as I said earlier, the warrior shield slam thing, it just caused the 39 bracket to implode prior to this most recent revival. Shield slam isn't as bad as it used to be. Actually, arms warriors now at 39s are pretty badass. But HB and Bird, you can fill this in as you guys will. One of the problems that I see, or at least from what I've read and so forth understand, is that once a rogue opens up, they're basically screwed if their target is dead and they don't have the proper support. And if they're going in melee style, that's going to cause healers to have to run in, possibly getting themselves out of position. If that rogue isn't aware of where they are and how to get out properly, that can cause more issues. And where you guys were saying, well, our other class is OP, it seems like almost every range class is OP, but it's balanced out by the fact that their OPness isn't getting someone else on their team killed, but there's still other people on the other team that can fire back with a similar sort of...
I kind of disagree. And why I say that is because, I think I said this on the last time too, is that I see rogues as a suicide bomber class. Whatever they open on, if they're a skilled rogue, they should kill if they have cooldowns up. Unless it's like... And you know what? With that being said, they need to be killing targets that they can kill. And what I mean by that is, like, they shouldn't be opening on a hunter that has disengage out.
With a bubble on it, just waiting,
They shouldn't be opening on mages that have blink and shit up. You know what I mean? If you open on a priest and you have trinket, that priest should probably be dead.
But then you're also introducing a much higher skill cap to your average rogue.
That's what I'm saying, is that I think overall it's not healthy to have rogues in games because it's just, people are not playing them how they should be, and there's too many of people playing that class. So it's the combination of the two, and I just think overall it's not healthy, and that, you know, I feel like right now a lot of the rogues that are playing are doing it incorrectly.
Alright, I have one more question to ask you guys, and then let's switch it to something else if you guys have something in mind that you'd like to talk about. Talking about the way people are playing rogues and so forth, I think it's safe to say, especially with how the 19 meta has changed, how someone plays a rogue is completely different. And Bird, you coming back from basically prior to the XP off patch to now, you must see this in a pretty ridiculous light, where how someone played a rogue in the past, now they have to play it now. I mean, do you just have, is it a thing where people are just almost nostalgic in their playstyle? And so they're going in there with the old ambush, just blow someone up, we think everything's going to be fine sort of thing? Or is it more to what you guys are saying too, where they just don't know what they're doing?
It's interesting because I don't know, it wasn't just the first game, it was probably the first 2 or 3, where I queued up. I did exactly that, where I just went up to whoever I decided I wanted to die, and I ambushed them. And, you know, I did a lot of damage, but they didn't get one shot. And from what I previously had experienced, that person was dead.
Did you try and hit sprint, and then you're like, wait a second?
Oh yeah, there's no more backstab, there's no more sprint. That was quite a bit different. I quickly, just in duels, I found out that swiftness potions are required, because you can't hit a person if they're ranged. You walk around, and then you're dead. And that's the duel. The end. So I do think it could definitely be that. I don't know. It's interesting because I can see how it is a problem caused by the rogue class itself, kind of, in that it supports this kind of passive, on and off, you know, high action and then kind of low action playstyle. And I guess that's appealing to a lot of people, and I'm not saying that you're playing the class wrong, but I don't know. Could that be a problem just in melee in general in the bracket? You know, causing your healers to go out of position and do these things, unless you're a flag carrier and you can survive on your own for quite a while. I mean, I don't really
feel like
see
HB can
arms
run on
warriors or ret paladins or enhancement shamans too much, so I can't really say, but
so I guess that the difference between like in-hand shaman, arms warriors, another melee class besides rogue. Prot paladin. Prot paladin.
Prot paladin, the melee DPS class.
I mean, I also know I've seen a few people play feral, and I think feral is just, oh god, don't get me started on feral. I mean, it can be successful, but it's not.
If I see a feral,
it's not there for the team play.
I've killed them within 2 seconds.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I think the difference between those classes and like rogue is that those classes are going to have to do their damage in a different way, and they're not going to be the ones all the time that are going to be open. Rogues, the successful rogues right now are going to be opening on someone in the other team's side, probably out of healer's range, but it's going to be different for the players that don't have stealth, like arms warriors, enhanced shamans, prot paladins, and down that line, because they got to. If they want to survive, at least. I mean, hell, you can charge in and fucking run into the back of their healer and hit him once, and sure, I guess you hit him. Good for you, but
it's like you have tickled his chin or his undercarriage, and now you're back at the spirit res.
Yeah. I mean, but rogue, it's a suicide bomber most of the time. Like, you open up, kill something, and if you're really good or you have really good, idea of where your teammates are, maybe you get out alive. Maybe you're playing Night Elf, maybe you use your meld really well. So it's just I don't know, it's a different class right now.
I'd be really interested to see a pre-made game happen where there was a ban of rogues and a ban of all ranged classes except for healers, and just see what happens. I think it'd be really interesting to see a person try and figure out the meta of how the heck do I play an enhancement shaman? Do I run at them and then just have my searing totem
that enhancement
do damage
shaman's
when
head
I'm
would
dead?
explode in about 4 seconds.
I think it'd be really interesting to see, and I think it's basically down to class balance right now that those classes simply can't be as effective as the other ones, so that nobody plays them.
I totally disagree.
Oh, really?
I totally disagree. I think that every class, including enhancement shaman, maybe besides Fury Warrior. I haven't seen anyone play Fury Warrior.
What about Fire Mage?
Oh, okay. Pick up Fire Mage. Fire Mage is just god awful. But I actually think Fury Warrior could have more success than a Fire Mage, just because it has 2 weapons. I think that every class can have success. It's just, does it fit into the 19 bracket scene right now? All the melee, look, you've seen armed warriors that have been very successful in mid, because a lot of the arms warriors that are playing right now and having success have a good presence of mind of where they are. Sometimes they charge it on someone overextended, they kill them, but they get right back into D stance and they go hopping back into their team. Sometimes you see an enhancement shaman go in, but he's got a stone bulwark totem in by his team and he's running in. He gets his flame shock off, maybe spreads it with lava lash, but he's going back. You got to dip in, you got to dip out, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But other than that, there's not too much room for the mid style of 19s. But if you're gonna play, if you have a team, this is going back to what I said earlier with the rogues, but it can totally work with other classes like 100%, and I think it's better that if you have a team where you get into a game where you have like 7 melee, like 3 heals, and an FC, I'd love to see the team that walks in on 7 melee, 1 healer on D, and a healer and an FC go for the flag. I'd love to see the team that can get out of the flag room with that on defense. You know what I mean? Like, there is ways to play. The melee classes are going to do really well around line of sight, because there's the enchants have brought things that are not really they're not really class skill abilities that can damage, like Elemental Force. Just Elemental Force is the only reason right now that enhanced shamans can do damage. That even some of the dot classes could try out. Actually, no, I take that back because it's melee. But you could do enhanced shaman. I'd love to see someone try Fury Warrior with 2 Elemental Force, because I think it'd still be pretty good. But you have to you have to know where you can succeed. And
well, I think you're saying you have to know where to succeed.
I mean, those... What do you mean? Sorry, I guess.
Well, nah, go ahead, because I'm going to bring it to a different tangent after.
So if I'm playing on an enhancement shaman, and I'm thinking about where I can succeed, and let's say that I'm playing on a team that is mid-based. Well, obviously, I'm not going to have as big of an impact as I can, because I'm an enhancement shaman, and if my team's really pushing mid, either A, I could go with them, or maybe B, I hang around in base, but it'd be probably more beneficial for me to at least be a body in mid to help at some length. If you're playing on a team where you have a mix of melee and ranged or whatever, I mean, maybe you have a more thought out strategy going on where you have you have your Brewmaster on D with some melee, and you send out your casters and your whatnot to go get the flag or whatever and try to cross and bring it back. I just think that people can be creative, but they have to have an understanding of their limits. And that's touchy, though, within the 19 bracket, because it's so, like I said earlier, everyone's now have warmed up to the fire of mid. And I think that a lot more classes now can succeed, but I'm not sure if all of them can succeed in mid.
Well, going back to the success and things like that, the paradigm is shifted toward the mid meta. And with Agonist bringing in that rogue ban, just going from individual class basis success for the bracket as a whole, is it beneficial if this rogue, well, we're not going to say ban, limit is a more accurate term. If that goes into effect, is that better or worse for the bracket as far as long-term health and stability?
Well, it's probably better for 5.42.
Yeah, it's hard to say with patches, of course. Yeah. I think for the long term,
well, we can't predict.
It'd probably be better. I mean, if you play a rogue and it's what you really love playing, and there's kind of two rogues who might be better than you, it's probably going to suck for you a little bit. But I don't really know what you could do about that unless you really kind of reached out and coordinated with them and, said, hey, having 4 rogues in a game isn't really too fun for any of us and we kind of lose. Do you guys want to try, a few games where we all go on D and just kind of see what happens? And that'd be the only real way you could go about it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to touch too much more on the rogue thing, but I think that overall, I think that the rogue limit is going to be a good thing. Yeah, I'm going to stay there. I don't really want to go on a tangent again.
No, that's fine. Just keep there. Rogue's going to be a good thing. Or the rogue limit will be a good thing. What do you think, Bird?
I definitely agree with that. I'm still not sure on whether it's more of a problem with melee or the meta of mid fighting, or if it's rogues in general and specific, or if it's the inexperience. It's hard to really pinpoint it, but I definitely think there's a lot of kind of series of unfortunate events kind of happening.
What are you, Lemony Snicket here?
Where it's a mix of all these different half problems kind of put together is creating this larger issue.
You know what? I'm going to expand this again. I'm going to bring this into expansion. I'm going to say that it's a problem of people not adjusting to the enchants as well. If I see a team, okay, let's say I'm playing, right? I'm playing on my Ellie Shaman, and I have normally just under 2k. I'm at 1950 health. And I see a team with 4 rogues, and I recognize 3 of them by name. You know what I mean? I can tell, wow, they got some good rogues on the other team.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do to give myself an opportunity to be there for my team? Well, I'm gonna put on some stam gear. I'm gonna put on some gear that's gonna give me the best opportunity to live through an opener on the rogue. You have to do your part as well. You have to.
That's a fantastic
a lot of
point,
people
my friend.
in 19s are playing with, I am Big Mongo, let me smash, and they're rocking in their 1900, 1800 sets, but with the enchants right now, an ambush that crits with like Night Stalker is like 1300, and assuming they're playing Assassination and they're using Elemental Force, they're going to get Elemental Force procs, they're going to get Crippling Poison procs, they're going to get another hit in, and you're probably dead if you're rocking 1900 health.
Just to mention, I don't think you actually get Crippling Poison in 19s.
I'm sorry, I ment Deadly Poison, but good call, thank you.
But I mean, Deadly Poison, not much better, it's more damage. You're
Yeah.
probably still dead.
But like, what I'm saying is like, I think also the players have a responsibility to understand themselves that they have to, we had this talk before, a long time ago, and by a long time ago I mean like before this all happened, before this shit went down and fucked up every bracket. But weapon enchants drastically change things. Can people adjust? That's the big question.
It's interesting because I agree. That is definitely a great point. I thought about sort of going down that road earlier, but we kind of got off track and I forgot about it. But it's interesting that people do kind of adapt like that, and they see rogues and then they put on a stamp set. Or, they get into a game and you don't have a flag carrier, so somebody just has a stamp set and they become kind of almost an off flag carrier.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can coin that term. All right.
Oh, it is. It's like any hybrid class from 39s has that extra set just in case.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm sorry. Keep going.
All right. So it's interesting that people kind of, pre-plan for that and they set up these sets and things, but people don't pre-plan for we get in a game with 4 rogues. I guess we'll still go mid.
Yeah.
Why not go on defense? Why not adapt and try and do it this way? It's weird that there's kind of a dichotomy to it where they adapt in maybe gear a bit better, but they don't really adapt in playstyle as easily.
I think that it is a mix of two. I think that, to be very honest, I'm going to say that a lot of people really don't have offsets, or honestly do not use them. One of the two. I'm going to say that a lot of people got their flavor of the month enchants, and have gotten one set or maybe a few other branches off. And I think a lot of players that aren't playing FC don't really have stam enchants. Because you could still use the mid play style and rock 800 more health and still play mid and do just fine because of how weapon enchants are. And just use 24 stam gloves, 15 stam bracers, 14 stam chest. You see where I'm getting with this is
Absolutely.
The weapon enchants are so insane that you just need to be alive. That's so people who are playing 1900 health and are getting global by rogues, they also have you're in a shitty situation. It sucks to be there, but you also have some responsibility on yourself to give yourself the best opportunity to survive. It's hard to, you can blame it on heals, or you can blame it on what you're not for you getting, wrecked, but there's probably some things that you could have done preemptively with your gear to give people on your team and yourself an opportunity to react. And I feel like in 19s, that's something that hasn't been adjusted.
I don't think the idea of alternate gear sets is a lost art just to 19s. I almost feel like since the introduction of BOAs, that it's slowly but surely almost gone the way of the dodo, where it's, well, I have my BOAs, I have my gear, I'm just gonna go ahead and that's gonna be my set. And, prior to where you'd get your bracers of the monkey, your bracers of the eagle, and your bracers of stamina, or you'd have your different, same thing for gloves and all sort of different things. It almost seems like that's become less prevalent the easier it's become to obtain the BOAs, where people are like, this is the standard best in slot set.
And you
what? Need to have this.
That's so relevant to the 19 bracket, because the best in slot, this is going off my opinion, the best in slot mindset standard is for a reasonable, put that in quotes, a reasonable amount of health with as much damage as you can get in as possible.
Mm-hmm.
When you get against teams that have this high, it doesn't even have to be rogues. It can just be teams with like a lot of burst on them for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, in some situations, not all the time, but in some situations, you need to have alternate gear sets, and I think people need to make that adjustment, because you can bitch like all you want if there's 4 rogues on the other team, but as the scene looks right now, like if I went and joined a game right now and there are 4 rogues on the other team, I mean, to be honest, like...
You're gonna be like, where's that glove reinforcement? I think I want that.
Exactly. Like, you know, like you have to take it upon yourself to give yourself the best opportunity. And you know what? I bet you that if a lot of people adjust to giving themselves a set that they have more survivability in mid, or maybe they're rocking 2,500 health, which I don't think's like crazy unreasonable, because most people play with straight damage enchants, and a lot of people don't use AGM anymore. But if you play with some more stam, I think 2,500 health is more reasonable. Not only might you survive rogues more often, but that might discourage rogues itself from queuing because they're not opening and globaling someone.
That's an interesting point you have right there, discouraging the rogues from the fact that their intent and purpose is to get that 1 or 2 global kill.
Because it doesn't really matter for spellcasters that much. What's the difference between me getting a Windsong proc and having... no, I'm going to say most of the time, because there are situations where it kind of sucks. But most of the time, I get a Windsong proc on my rogue, or my shaman, or, you know, I get a Jade Spirit proc on my mage. I mean...
You get you 33% and you're like, boom, boom, boom.
How much is it going to hurt? What's the difference between, like, me 3-shotting someone, or me 4 to 5-shotting someone, considering that I'm playing midfield and there's other people on the team also hitting targets?
I think that's really interesting. And I talked to you about this, HB, just over... whispers in game. But when I was back on playing my rogue, of course, I'm reading about, rogues, you kill something, you die. You're a suicide bomber, that's just how it is.
Right,
and I was like, this is not fun. Why is the funnest playstyle of 5 seconds of action and then, 20 seconds of a res timer and running back to your team? How is that fun for anybody?
What are you, a 2-pump chump? What's going on here?
So I basically built my entire gear around lasting as long as possible, and that's when I originally tinkered with enchants and stuff, and I figured out that Colossus, doesn't have a internal cooldown. I was like, oh hey, that's pretty cool. It's probably not meant to be like that, but whatever, I'll abuse it.
That shit will pop up all the time.
Oh yeah, and if you have it on both weapons, I think when you guys mentioned this in the podcast, you guys weren't sure. It does proc to shields, so you get 562?
Yeah, I didn't believe that when HB said it, because that just seemed too ridiculous to actually be a possibility.
But it definitely happens. And so it's funny because I originally got Foreman's gloves in like 2 hours or something, and I put...
So many people are going to hate you for that one.
Well, yeah. It's okay. I'm having a horror story come afterwards. You can feel my pain after hating me. You're like, yeah, he deserved that. So I got Foreman's gloves in like 2 hours, slapped a 15 agility on those, and then, of course, after my 3 games of trying to ambush people and me dying, and I started, thinking, okay, I need to survive more, because this isn't fun. And I mean, if I had kept going like that, I would have quit within 2 weeks. So I'm glad I didn't. So I was like, oh, 24 stam. That'd be useful. That's a big chunk of HP. Oh, these Foreman gloves are already equipped. Well, that's a problem. So I had to go farm another one.
Wow.
To go put 24 stam on those. And, so that was fun. And that set took me about 4 days.
Oof.
And, then, if that wasn't enough, then getting them on my hunter took a week and a half.
Oof.
Just for my first set. Ooh, that was painful. And so I made sure, I was like, am I gonna want 24 stam on these? Am I really? And
Well, I'll tell you what, when we do Gearing Horror Stories Volume 2, we'll make sure to include you on that.
That's fine. Yeah, so that was like, oh, well, yeah, I deserved that, I guess. Especially after reading how other people have these much, much higher problems in acquiring some pieces of gear than I did with the first set.
I dare you to step in the ring with Revlosh and come out acting like 4 days is a big deal.
Yeah. Don't think I'm gonna venture into some of these other brackets too
Speaking of
quickly
which,
here.
Hey, Yubi, did I mention I won on my lock and I got Eagle Gloves second time? And I got Monkey Gloves first run? Sorry, I forgot to mention that, but okay, just to be clear. So I got that
I'm sure you
twice
just
in a row?
said that so you could, everyone listening right now could hear my head explode.
So not only did I do the
I'm not gonna
exact
give you
same
that
thing on my
sense of
Shaman, but I
satisfaction.
got the exact same thing on my... Oh, what? Lock? Okay, yeah, okay, we're clear.
Can we focus on 19s right now? I think we've talked about rogues enough. We're going to use
Hey,
this
you're the one
as
who brought up Revlosh. I didn't bring it up.
Anyway,
eat
so
shit
back,
and die. Moving on.
the origin of where that all began. So I basically made, a survival set, quote unquote. It was almost like a flag carrying set. And, it worked really well, and I was having a lot more fun. I was definitely not dying very many times at all. I mean, there are some games on my Hunter where I'm dying 8 times or something, and I have pretty low health on him, but I'm a rogue, and I'm dying 3 times in a BG, and I'm still putting up, second highest damage on my team or something. And I don't have agility enchants, I don't have attack power enchants. I have, stamina and 8 agility on my pants. 24 stamina on the gloves.
It's because it's probably because, correct me if I'm wrong, you had more time on target than most of the other rogues.
Yeah.
Because you were physically alive and able to be in the action longer than they were.
Basic thing. I could live on my own fighting a target. I mean, these people, I'm getting 562 damage shields every 3 seconds. These people aren't killing me in a second. I'm living on my own for a substantial amount of time, and I'm not one-shotting
I feel like
people.
right now what you're
Don't need
saying
to.
is making people oh, I'm going to keep playing my rogue. And this is
Also-
how it's going to work. And it's counterintuitive to what we're saying where the rogue limit is good.
Yeah, so I if other rogues geared like that, I think it could totally work. Have 4 on your team? Cool. You just have 4 off flag carrying people that also put out a ton of damage.
You know what? I'm going to say something though. I think that a lot of rogues are going to be stubborn, and a lot of them won't get the Colossus and more stamina chance until they realize that they can't global people anymore. And that goes on to a lot of the older community members in 19s and the people who've been around longer to, you get into those games where you see 3 or 4 recognizable rogues, or just rogues in general, and put on the stam set. Because they're going to realize, A, they don't want to play this class anymore because they're not one-shotting things. Or B, they enjoy rogue. How can I be more successful? And they're going to figure other things out within their gear.
It's interesting because I think this could also be part of the problem with the inexperienced / undergeared rogue problem, is the I don't know, true rogues, quote unquote. They've realized that it's probably not that fun to play the suicide bomber for 4 hours a night for 2 weeks straight. And so they probably don't play rogue very much. And so when you queue into games, they're maybe on a healer or a caster or whatever instead of their rogue. And then these other rogues in the game don't actually really play rogue and know how to play the rogue. And they're also pretty new because they haven't spent 2 weeks being a suicide bomber. They're starting up and they think it's fun. And then they're going to realize it's not all that fun.
It's like you almost have to pay your dues
Right.
as a newbie rogue and then realize, wait, there's a better way to do this. There's a way to make my team better other than me being a mid-20th century plane bombing the hell into something.
But you know what? The big stamp on this is that I don't think that happens unless people take the initiative to make their health sets, to make bulkier sets, because they're still either going to not get, people are still going to get one shot, or people are going to just, continue the same path. So I think it goes on the non-rogue classes to have alternative sets before it goes on the rogues.
Oh, absolutely.
I definitely agree with that.
So
You're gonna almost have to force them into a corner, and then they're gonna have to figure out their way out. Because they're not doing it on their own.
Wait, as a rogue? I thought you could stealth.
Really, you went that corny ass route?
I blink out of the corner? Can I do that?
Want to buy Shadow Step?
Yeah.
Well, no, we've been saying we're going to finish the rogue talk for, I'd say, the past at least 30 minutes. Is there anything else regarding the 19 bracket that either of you would like to speak about?
I would like to say that let's just talk about like overall health of the bracket. I'm not just overall health. I think that there's still. See, this is really interesting because I think in Pugs that I think there's one guild on Alliance side, 1.5 guilds on Alliance side that I think Tyrallion queues a lot, and I think there's a handful of Warsong Warlords who also queue a lot. And on the Horde side, I think there's like 3 guilds that queue 5-mans a lot. And there still hasn't been a dramatic change. And I'm still sticking with my statement that if the quality of games is going to continue and more people decide to play Alliance side, I really think that the games are going to suffer. I really think the amount of games are going to suffer and quality of games.
I definitely agree with you that the games are currently suffering and could very well continue down that path. But it's interesting going off of what we just talked about of how we might have to kind of force it from the non-rogue classes. You know, that could probably take 2 weeks of rogues not being able to one-shot people for a little while before they start to figure it out.
It's not even rogues, man. It's not. That's not even the problem. It's the problem that Horde is
but
way
HB,
more organized.
Would it not assist to the Alliance objective of actually winning a game if they could go in with a better class makeup? Regardless of communication and all that, if they could go in with, say, 1 rogue or 2 rogues, the appropriate number of healers and proper other classes, you don't even think it matters?
I'm going to say no, but I'm also going to assume that it's players that are. Give me a second. The problem, the main issue that I see is that Horde has much more group queuing of players that play together on Skype or on whatever system, like they're talking, that have been playing a long time, and Alliance...
Don't be action for 30 nods.
And Alliance seriously lacks that. Seriously lacks that. I'm not even sure that some of the guilds on Alliance side actually queue with Skype, to be honest. Or, sources of communicating at ease. Whereas the Horde guild is primarily doing that. I mean, you could literally have, you have 5 people on Skype together, like, really trying to win the game. And it doesn't matter what class you're on. You're going to give a pretty fair shot if you're, an average or above player, and you're really trying to play objective. Like, I don't think it matters. I think it's more, the problem for Alliance is more, let's get focused on playing as a group. Let's get some communication going, because right now, me hopping in solo, is not working right now.
But Buns, do you think that if Alliance communicates better, that will in itself almost eliminate having too many rogues on the same team? Because if they're talking together, it's like, well, dude, are you queuing a rogue? Yeah. Are you? Yeah. Everyone in my group's queuing a rogue too. Well, shit, we at least need someone to heal us.
Yeah, I do think
so.
I
definitely think communication is a big factor. I have, 30 games at least since I've started back up. Probably more than that. And I have whispered people, and I have gotten a reply or some semblance of non-bot. I've been replied to in whisper twice. Ever. One was by a rogue, and it was basically like, ambush this guy in 5 seconds. And we did, and we killed them. And that was it. That was the only time That never happened. And then the other one was regarding an enchant. The guy had never seen my bracers enchant before. For those of you wondering, I use 19 attack power to bracers, which some people apparently didn't know existed. It does. It's pretty good. Because in terms of...
I like your delayed statement. Those who don't know.
Yeah.
It's good. Get it? Holla.
Well, it's
listen,
interesting because there's an 8 agility enchant to bracers that you can't actually apply right now. It's bugged, and you can't apply it to an item level lower than 300, even though you should be able to.
Well, then that should work great for 19s.
Yeah, so that's the 8 agility. So you can get a 7 agility, which is almost the same thing. But I just see most people using, like, stamina. So, I mean,
well, there may
fine.
be a reason for that of which we discussed.
Uh-huh. I would probably agree with you there. In fact, I'm still trying to do a couple dungeon runs that I can't stand doing more than like 2 at a time just to get, monkey belt or something over the bandit one in case
hold on, I'm sorry. Did you just say monkey belt?
Yeah.
HB, what do you know about a monkey belt?
You don't even play the tune.
I know, but I just had to bring it up.
This is something that I don't know what's going on.
No, it's an inside joke where on my free-to-play hunter, I just said, screw it, I have a 1-1 monkey belt because I refuse to do anything that involves any more dungeons. I'm about 100 deep and I'm done.
Yeah.
But that's way too far off track. Let's
and I'm
get
on
back
my
on.
second F2P that's almost fully geared. What? Oh, okay, so...
Buns is a douche. And let's keep going.
Anyway, I actually forgot what I was talking about.
I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, you go.
That's the big difference for me, and I think, here's a week later. Do we see those changes happening? To be very fair, I haven't been playing a whole lot the last week. Bird,
but also,
have you been playing a lot this last week? Have you seen communication step up in the last week on Alliance side?
Definitely not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've been playing quite a bit the past week. I can't do it every night. I have some classes that go till 9 p.m. my time.
Ooh.
Which is my funnest class, by the way. It's about video games, which is just awesome. So like our homework is play a Steam game, go to an arcade. Class is awesome, but it's at 9 o'clock at night. So, yeah. Some nights I can't play, so it very well could be happening and I'm just not in these games, but on the nights I can play, I normally play at least 5 to 10 games, and definitely a severe lack of communication, aside from, like, graveyard farming sucks, and then 3 people AFK.
But also, it's only been a week since we had that conversation, HB. And that's a...
You know what? It's only been a week since we've had that conversation, but it's been a problem for a few weeks before that conversation.
This is true, but it's gonna take... It's very simple to fix. It takes one person to either open a vent channel, start a Skype group, Dolby Action,
or a guild,
raid call.
Or a
yes,
guild.
A guild will work as well, but that requires more people on one server. But
yeah, I'm on a server all on my own.
How difficult is it to get a lot of people on one server right now? It could be any server. How difficult?
But
is
how
it to
much
make a
easier
tune
would it
that's
be
playable?
if someone from Alliance was just like, listen, I have Dolby Action. All you have to do is download it. You don't have to go through the process of adding people to a Skype call. I know. But
wow,
Dolby
adding
Action is
people to
much
Skype call,
easier.
It's a pretty big commitment there. It takes a lot of effort.
I'm going to ignore your sarcasm and proceed down my road. Just because it actually can become an issue. If you're actually going through a game and you have multiple people coming in, it's like, all right, I'm going to add you, kick you, and so forth. Okay. If you have something like Dolby Action, everyone can join the channel. They can choose to go in the active game or go down to another one. It's basically Skype plus Vent. So if you have something like that set up for 19s, and you can do it for both Alliance and Horde, it doesn't have to be one specific. But that could go a little bit of ways to increasing the communication aspect of 19s and possibly making the bracket more competitive as a result.
Do you think, and this is the impression I get kind of as a new player, I guess, Because I'm totally open to doing that. That'd be awesome. I'd just go and hang out with people, even if I'm not able to play or I'm playing in a different bracket or whatever. But I feel like a lot of the more, I don't know, experienced longtime players are kind of in their own little cliques and groups, and there's maybe some
you are absolutely correct.
Disagreements between people, and
no, you're correct.
Like there's kind of segmented splits off from the community, and a lot of those players wouldn't ever show up into the kind of community.
This also goes back as to, do you want to play your rogue or do you want to play in a bracket that flourishes? And if people need to decide, do they want to play in a bracket or do they just want to do their thing?
That's really, really interesting. I think this is like, I think that right there, that line has summed up the majority of what we've been talking about in this podcast. And you know what? I want to say that I think it's based on what the 19 community looks like right now, I think it's going to take someone to step up from Horde side and say, we're going to play Alliance. And what I mean, because that there's, as the 19 community is growing, it's definitely growing, there's no doubt about that, but a lot of the new people who are coming in are inexperienced or testing the water, but there's been a few good players that have come in and are playing. But
yeah, you called one out the other week. That was with the best name ever, Angry Beaver,
Sneaky Beaver, or something,
or Scary Beaver.
The thing is that it's going to take someone. A lot of the people that are the experienced players that are still playing and actively queuing have gone Horde, and a lot of these people that play could have it in them to be a leader. But maybe that they don't want to. It's a big effort to say like, hey, I'm going to be a leader. And you know what? Anyone who whichever person makes that effort and puts it all out, their effort to do that, there has to be some sort of respect. Whether you agree or disagree with whatever they're doing, there has to be some sort of respect level for them trying to create.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many people do you think could honestly do that? Because I feel like, from what I see, Agonist has been quite a big leader in the resurgence of the group as a whole, or the bracket as a whole. But, it might be him or her, or, 3 other people or something, but I don't feel like there would be a huge shift, really, in enough people to make that big of a difference.
I think that...
So I guess, to rephrase that, how many people do you think can honestly cause a big enough shift that
I think you would be amazed at how little it takes to actually make the shift.
I think it takes
You just need one person.
Yeah.
I very well could be wrong. Like I said, I haven't spent very much time in the bracket, so I don't really know these interconnected communities and relationships between people. So.
Yeah, and I shouldn't pretend to know the 19 community better than HB. I'm just talking it from other bracket standpoints where there have been people that have come up and got the bracket going that haven't been active for 4 years, but they just took the initiative to make a thread and said, let's get the bracket going. And there are so many people at 19s, cough, HB, cough, that if they just went through and said, this is a place for you guys to go, this is a place for y'all to talk, and there are many other people that could do it, that have that built-in respect that you mentioned, and just notoriety in a sense, whether good or bad, it almost doesn't matter, that you can get something off the ground, and it's there, and it's good to go.
I am going to go off of that a little bit. I'm going to have to say it's got to be someone who really enjoys playing the bracket as well.
That is a very good caveat that I left out.
Because if it's someone who maybe queues a few times a week or doesn't really play on a daily basis, it won't be effective. But if it's someone who truly likes to play and is there pretty much day in, day out, it'll be very effective. For me, I play probably twice a week, if that, right now, on average.
But HB, do you think that if someone that plays, regardless of, as long as people like them, let's ignore everything else. Like, if people like speaking with that person, do you think that person could get off, say, an alliance form of communication, or even almost like a central hub for the bracket to communicate verbally? Or do you think it'd take much more than that in a much more significant individual?
It would take more than that. It would take... That's why I really was stressing the guild thing. It would take a guild. Whether or not it starts as communication, at the end of the day, it's going to end up having to be a guild. It's going to have to be a group of people that find out, start queuing with each other. Either they decide originally they're going to make a guild, or they just have so much fun queuing together day in, day out. They're like, let's make a guild. Let's get this boat rolling, and then once the boat's rolling, you get people to tag along. But it takes that one person with the 4 or 5 friends to get the boat rolling. Pretty much in any situation.
All right. Well, on that, do you guys think it's about time to bring this to a bow?
Sure.
I don't know how I would bow it up. That was a lot.
HB's the bow expert.
Oh, okay. Let me take some notes here.
You want me to bow it up right now?
Are you having some difficulty?
Well, no, if you have more, go ahead. It's just we're getting over an hour at this point. That's why I'm just saying it may be bow time.
By the way.
Yeah. That's why I was saying it might be bow time.
Okay, bow time. Fukushima? We are all dead. Thank you, Japan.
That right there is how you make a bow. Thank you guys for listening. H. Bizzle, as always, Bird of Prey. Thank you for joining us. Check us out at YoWowPVP at bisnation.net. And we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.
Peace.
See ya.
You are listening to 15 Minutes with HB, a podcast produced by bisnation.net members.